Hey y'all, happy Sunday and welcome to this week's live Q&A session. This is the portion of the show where we allow YouTube to send out notifications that we're going live. If you're watching this live Q&A on replay, please scrub ahead until this graphic disappears and the actual show begins. If you're watching live and you have any comments or questions, please go ahead and put them in the live chat. But for now, grab a beverage, sit back, and relax while the countdown timer does its thing. Then we'll get started. Hey y'all, don't know what happened there. Wow. All right. Well, anyhow, Happy Sunday. Welcome aboard. It's been a week. What can I tell you? Cold, not near as cold as some of y'all are experiencing. I mean, I don't know if y'all down south are still got your teeth chattering and wondering what the devil is going on or not. But we haven't been that bad, and thankfully no snow. But what can I tell you? Today we're going to do something a little bit different in that I've had uh, uh, questions over the years and here recently that involve little small things that are basically not worthy of their own video. They're just little short things that I can talk about for a minute or two. Too long for a YouTube short, but too short for their own video. And I thought I'd throw a few things out there and just see where the conversation goes. But before we do that, I do want to say hello and thank you to my friend Steve over at Harneal Media, who sponsors MarkLindsay CNC.com. I talk about him every week, and I do that for a reason. If you're even toying with the idea of establishing your own website and don't know where to turn, don't know where to go, head over to harnealmedia.com. There's a link down in the description of this live stream and every video on my channel for a reason. Um, and hit the contact us button over there and shoot Steve a message. He's more than willing to talk to you about it, find out what you want, what you think you need, maybe suggest a few things, maybe kind of turn you away from a few things that you don't really need. Um, he's very, very reasonably priced, very competitively priced, and you'll wonder how he gets away with doing everything he does so cheaply after a while. Do yourself a favor. It's free to talk to him about it. Just head over to harnealmedia.com, hit the contact us button, and tell him I sent you, and he'll take care of you as much or as little as you want him to do. So, thank you, Steve. Thank you for everything you do for me and for the many, many people that you serve. I appreciate it greatly. Um, I decided to kind of do a short tips video and get into some of the discussions that we have on a semi regular basis. And it's kind of developed into something else. Those of you who were here long before we went live will see that the question kind of turned into care and feeding of cutting boards, and that's fine. I do like to do that. I like to talk about all things woodworking, finishing, and the CNC to me is just a part of it. We will get into some CNC stuff, of course, too, but I did want to address a few things about care and feeding of cutting boards, since that seems to be a topic of discussion this morning. And I thought I'd start with the elephant in the room. I have had people ask me about putting a cutting board in a dishwasher. And that is the number one cardinal rule, that thou shalt not break. That's the 11th commandment. Thou shalt not put thy cutting board in the dishwasher. And if you want to know why, I can show you. This was a Reddit post. I don't know when this was posted, but it was posted in the subreddit r/woodworking. And it's pretty cut and dried. If you're ever curious about what happens if you put an end grain cutting board in a dishwasher, here it is. Now, for those of you who know, end grain cutting boards are just not meant to go in the dishwasher. That's all there is to it. They're expensive. They're, and it only takes one time to run a cutting board through a dishwasher and just totally destroy it. So that's the cardinal rule right there. Do not Do not put a cutting board in the dishwasher. You would think it would be obvious, but it's not. If you don't know, you don't know. So those of us who do make cutting boards should let our folks know, number one, repeat after me. Do not put this in the dishwasher. And it doesn't matter if it's an end grain board or a face grain or edge grain board. They don't go in the dishwasher. Now, um, uh, Rich Bratcher is 100% correct here. Wood spoons don't even do well in the dishwasher. They will crack, they will warp. And when you develop cracks, you're introducing bacteria. Bacteria can get into those cracks and stay there. So, it doesn't go in the dishwasher, and that's all there is to it. Now, if it's a purchased cutting board that you're not really sure about, um, it's a little bit more difficult. But if you have contact with the board's maker, or if you're the maker yourself, that helps out. Um, you can, you need to know what kind of finish is on that cutting board. Now, the most popular finishes these days are the good old fashioned mineral oil and a beeswax mineral oil wax finish that's applied. Um, and mineral oil, I've used it. It's cheap to buy. You can get it, you can see covering up the brand. This is pharmaceutical grade. Um, it's about, this is 1 pint or 473 milliliters. It is about $3-4 for a bottle like this. It's not expensive. You can get beeswax real cheap. And there's a formula you can find online for so many parts mineral oil, so many parts beeswax. You heat up the beeswax, melt it, and mix it up. And then you apply it like you would a car polish. And, apply it, let it kind of uh, uh, glaze over, and then buff it up. And that works. It works fabulous. Um, you can also get dedicated butcher block and cutting board conditioners. I got this at my local Lowe's, and it is mineral oil, beeswax, carnauba wax, and a couple of other things. Um, exceeds requirements set forth in U.S. FDA regulations for direct and indirect food contact. Make sure that it is food safe. That's the main thing. Okay. Um, and that's good for end grain cutting boards. That's good for face grain or edge grain cutting boards. How often should you apply it? Basically, you can tell when it starts looking a little dull, or you can see a little. Um, it just looks like it's thirsty. That's when it's time to condition the board. That may mean adding more wax. That may mean applying more oil. That may mean doing both. That may mean just using some more cutting board conditioner. But it's important to know what what that finish is, because some finishes are not compatible. For instance, my go-to finish, um, personally, is 100% pure tung oil. And you can apply a, a mineral oil beeswax wax over the top of that if you prefer, but I prefer to use the cutting board conditioner. It The tung oil will cure in the pores of the wood, and it will help seal it, but it's not perfect. And every time you cut, you're going to make cuts in the cutting board, and that conditioner will help seal up those cuts and provide a little bit more protection. How often you use it depends on how often you use the board. But basically, overall, trust your eyes. You can tell if it's starting to look a little dull. Maybe it's not as doesn't have that glow it used to have. It's time. You know, as far as washing is concerned, I tell people what works for me, what I have done in the past, and that is I go ahead and I wash it with soap and water and then rinse under warm running water. Not so hot I can't touch it, but you know, some dish soap and water, scrub it down real good, rinse it, towel dry it as good as you can. Then I tell people to set it up on edge and let it air dry. A lot of people like to just set it down on their feet, and that's better than nothing. It will work. You want air circulation to let it finish, let any moisture that's gotten into those pores evaporate. The reason I set it up on edge is because using a piece of scrap uh, end grain here, you're fighting gravity. Water, if you set it down on its feet, water is just going to, any moisture is going to attempt to seep further and further down into that grain. So by setting it up on edge, you're not fighting gravity. You get air on both sides and capillary action may draw some in, but it's going to try to tend to evaporate or run down the face. So I just find that it's setting it up on edge and letting it dry overnight works better for me than setting it down on its feet. Depending upon the size and thickness of the board as well, you may notice over time that a cutting board setting on its feet and being stored on its feet, it can actually start to sag under its own weight. It'll take a while to do it. I mean, we're talking maybe over the course of a couple of years, but it is noticeable. So I store them on their sides, not on their feet, and I put them down on their feet when I use them, wash them, put it back up on edge, and in a rack if you can. If not, then maybe on a towel or something, so it's not any moisture that runs down. It's not sitting in it and absorbing more water. So, and then apply the conditioner or the beeswax as it needs it. So, and that's worked for me. They're grief. My grandparents had cutting boards that have lasted longer than I've been alive, and I'm in my 60s, so it works. Believe me. So that was that subject. It kind of got into just a interesting discussion there in the chat before we went live, and I figured, yeah, okay, we'll talk about it. So now, one of the other things that we were talking about last week was we were talking about, and I didn't have a good illustration, and I was trying to hold up bits and it wasn't working, was the difference between um, an upcut spiral, a downcut spiral, and a compression bit. And I came across a couple of illustrations here that actually explains better than I ever could. And I want to thank Bob Heltebridle. I don't know if he's out in the chat now or not, but I want to thank Bob Heltebridle for sending me one of these illustrations. And this is basically it. We're talking about an upcut bit, a downcut bit, and a compression bit, where they're used and what is the difference. And as I was trying to explain last week, an upcut bit like this one, if you look at the bit, the sharp cutter edge is on the top of the flute. So when this bit starts cutting, it says material flow in this illustration. We're talking about the chips and the sawdust. As it's spinning, it's going to throw the chips out of the cut in an upwards direction. Okay. And as the cutting edge slices the fibers, because of the direction of rotation, it's going to tend to lift the top surface. It's going to lift the fibers, and this can lead to chip out. If you have ever had a situation where you're cutting plywood with an upcut spiral, you will see how you're getting real ragged, chipped out edges up on top. This is why. It's the direction of rotation and where that cutting edge sits. A downcut bit, if you look at a downcut bit, the sharp cutter edge is on the bottom edge of that flute. And as it cuts, the direction of rotation, the way that flute is shaped, it's going to shove those chips downward. And the reason for that is with that cutter edge, with that direction of rotation, it's forcing everything downward and it's slicing the fibers on the top. So if you think about it in those terms, if you need the top surface to look nice and clean, a downcut bit is the way to go. If you need the bottom surface to be nice and clean and the top surface doesn't really matter, an upcut bit is the way to go. A compression bit will give you the best of both worlds. It's a compression bit. The flutes at the bottom of the bit are upcut. Then you have a compression section, and the flutes at the top of the bit are downcut. So it's going to slice the fibers in a downward direction on the top of the material, and the direction of rotation and the upcut portion is going to slice those fibers in an upward direction. Okay. Right here in the middle is the compression section where all those chips are going to go. And you can see here the material flow. It's going to tend to push those chips behind the spinning bit. So what you have is truly the best of both worlds with a compression bit. Now, not all compression bits are created equal. This bottom portion here, the upcut section, may be a quarter of an inch deep. So you have to be able to get that plunge all the way down past this upcut portion. So that might be 5/16 of an inch or maybe 3/8 of an inch. So you have to figure out, you have to ask yourself, is my machine strong enough? Is my router or spindle strong enough for that deep of a cut in one pass? This is where Cody came in. Cody Elkins at Cadence Manufacturing Design, hashtag not sponsored, came in with the Jenny bit, where this upcut portion is only 1/8 of an inch tall. Most hobby CNCs can handle that kind of a plunge in one pass. Not all can. This is where we get into leads and ramps and things like that. So knowing your machine, knowing its capacity and its capability, and Cody developed this bit simply because he runs a Shapeoko, one of the old original Shapeokos. So he needed a bit that would allow that deep of a plunge. Couldn't find one for a reasonable price, so he started making them. And the rest, as they say, is history. This comes in real handy if you cut a lot of sheet goods, like plywood. I'm fortunate enough to have a machine that will handle it. I can cut through 3/4 inch plywood in one pass. So I can set up a lead into the vector I want to cut, and we can get into leads later on if you'd like. I can set up a lead to the vector I want to cut out, plunge into the full depth, and just go and cut 3/4 inch plywood in one pass. If it's solid wood like hard maple, purple heart, hickory, something like that, I may need to do a couple of passes. But I can set up that lead to where that bit's going to plunge into the proper depth before it gets to the vector I want to cut out, so that any plunge moves are done away from my outside profile. So, but that is the overall difference. Now, 8 Center says here the S and Z shapes, or the Z and S shapes, are easy to remember. And that's true. If you look at these bits from the sides, it comes down to this flute. When you see this flute coming around this way, that's the same way an S would flow. Or no, excuse me, that's the way. Wait. No. I'm going backwards here. And yes, this is the way a Z would flow. This is a way an S would flow. And if you look at them, it kind of looks like a stylized S. That doesn't look anything like a Z, but it's the direction of this flow. Personally, I just think of it this way. If the cutting edge is on top, it's an upcut. If the cutting edge is on the bottom, it's a downcut. And you can see that real easily. So they all have their place. There is not a one-stop solution. Sometimes an upcut is the right bit to use. Sometimes a downcut is the right bit to use. It just depends. There's some other information here. A downcut bit is going to give you a good top finish, but not necessarily the best finish in like a pocket bottom. An upcut is going to give you a good bottom finish, but not necessarily a good finish on the top edge. It's 100% up to you. Okay. So, they all have their place, and I have both. I will say this. Do not use a downcut bit for drilling. I've talked about this before, and I'm going to continue to talking about it. Do not use a downcut bit to drill a hole. With a downcut bit, again, the cutting edge is slicing fibers downward, but it's also packing those chips in downwards. You can start a fire. I know because I did it. This is not some friend of a cousin of a guy who used to know a cat that had an owner that did this. This was me. I did it. I started a fire. Use an upcut bit to drill holes. You want those chips and the heat within those chips ejected from that hole as quickly as you can. Do not use a downcut bit to drill. Period. So that's enough preaching. I'll get off my high horse on that. So I see a couple of other things here. Dwayne says one thing that might help visualize this is that looking down the bit from the collet end, the bit is spinning clockwise. Yes, it is. It is. It is. Let's see here. Should you just always use compression bits for the best of both cuts? Not always. Not always. Again, in hardwood, You have to treat hardwoods differently than you do sheet goods, like plywood or MDF. And I find that it also depends on what type of edge we're talking about. If I need a clean, pristine top surface and a clean, pristine bottom surface, because I want that nice straight edge, generally speaking, what I will do, let me bring this down, bring up a spire here, and we'll bring us in. Bunk there. I've just got something to cut out. I will do a profile toolpath, 2-flute, 1/4-inch end mill, cutting the full thickness to the outside. I will do a separate last pass. And the separate last pass with an allowance of 0.01. Okay. What this will do, and I think for this I would edit the passes, change my number of passes to 4, set passes, click OK. Now I'm going to do it in 4 passes, do a separate last pass with an allowance of 0.01. Let me show you what that does. I'll click calculate. Then we'll jump in over here and we can see that I've got a bigger gap in between the last 2 passes of this cut than we have between the first 3. The first 3 cuts, the first 3 passes are going to be cut that 0.01 bigger than the vectors. Okay. Then that last pass, what's going to happen is we get around here to the start point. We can see, remember, light blue is a plunge, green is a retract. And there we can see a movement. It's going to cut the first 3 passes, lift out of the material, move in, and then plunge down and make that last cut full depth, removing any witness marks from these first 3. That's going to give me the best finish. Okay. That's going to give me the best finish, whether I'm using upcut or downcut. Now, if I'm generally speaking, felt that coming on. Okay, I see what you're saying. Maybe upcut, then the V-bit to finish the top. Yes, if I'm going to be rounding over the edge around this cut, or if I'm going to be adding a chamfer, then I will go ahead and use an upcut bit, because the chamfer or the roundover is going to take care of that. And generally speaking, I try to put the final profile, I try to make it on the side that's going to be the most exposed, the one that you're going to see the most. That way, if I do have any chip out or anything, it's either on the bottom or on the back or something like that. Or I will, again, run a chamfer or a roundover to clean that up. Now, that's not to say you can't use a compression bit with a with hardwood, just that you might have to take smaller passes. But that first distance, that first depth, is going to be on how tall the upcut portion of that bit is on the compression bit. If it's an 1/8 inch and your machine and the spindle or router can handle it, then by all means bury that puppy, 1/8 of an inch, 3/16 of an inch to get that upcut portion down in the wood. And I mentioned using leads. Let me show you what that is. We'll come down here in my profile toolpath, still using my separate last pass. I'm going to add leads. Right here in this tab, I'll click add a lead, and I want a straight line lead. It can be 90 degrees, it can be whatever. I need that lead, I'll make it 1 inch. So 1.0. And we'll do a lead out as well. And the lead out overcut distance is where it leads in and goes around. Is there an overcut? I want it so that it bypasses where that entrance was. Oh, thank you. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it, dummy. All right. I'm back here in my, yeah, I'm really being a dummy. Sorry. Again, I clicked on leads, add leads. I want a straight line lead, 90-degree angle. It doesn't have to be a 90-degree angle. It can be whatever angle you want. I want the lead length to be 1 inch. I want the lead, I want to do a lead out, and we'll do an overcut of a 1/2 inch, 0.5. Now I'll calculate that tool path, and we see the leads right here. Okay. Now let me kind of rock this at an angle, and I'm going to slow down the preview so you can see what happens. And we'll zoom in on this section here, and we'll preview it. It leads in and starts cutting. So my bit is already down way out here. Then it's going to go past and come out, then go back down and go in here. So it's doing all of its plunges and depth changes out here. Okay. That is really going to help as far as getting that upcut portion down into the material before it gets up here to the vector that's actually going to be cut. Now, usually, along with leads, I'll reset the preview, I will also add ramps so that out here, it's not plunging straight down, it's gradually ramping into that depth. So I'll add a ramp, I'll add a smooth ramp, ramp on lead in, and it does all of the rest of the figuring for you. Okay. Calculate. And now when we look at the tool path, we can see these light blue lines. It's going to plunge in, ramp down to that first depth, then go. Come around to the lead out, retract, and then come over and ramp into the next plunge. We'll get it set like this so we can see what's happening and kind of zoom in over here, and we'll preview it. You see it ramps in, now it starts cutting. That puts that upcut portion of the compression bit down in the material before it gets here and destroys the finish on the edge. Then lift up, come over, and ramp in deeper. Let it come around. Then ramp in and go finish the cut. That will give you the absolute best finish of all on your part using a compression bit. Just make sure your lead in is on the waste side of the material. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, using a compression bit in conjunction with a ramp and leads will give you the best finish possible. Now, again, this is not to say that you can't do this in hardwoods, because you can. Um, Something that folks don't realize, and this is one of those quick tips that I was going to talk about, is when we edit the number of passes, we have a lot more control than people think. All of these lines over here indicate the passes, the 4 passes this toolpath is going to take. And we can see the depths here, 0.1875, 0.375, 5625, and then 0.75. We can also modify those depths right here. For instance, pass 1, the depth is 0.1875. If my machine can handle it, I can have that first pass at 0.25. Then click apply. And now my first pass is going to be that 1/4 of an inch to get that bit down in there, to get that bottom upcut portion down in the material. Then I can take it a little bit easier. Now, also, if I want that last pass to take just a little amount off of there, I can set a last pass thickness of 0.01. Click apply. Now it's added another pass. It's going to be a total of 5 passes, but that last pass is going to be real small. This also works in pocket tool paths. For instance, you can have that last pass take a very slight amount off just to clean up any tooling marks or what have you. And that works in a profile, and it works in a pocket as well. Now, in this type of a profile, I wouldn't use this, but it is an option. Okay. I will say, okay, we're going with 5 passes. And we'll calculate. Now we can look right here, and we can see that first pass is real deep. It's that 1/4 inch deep. Then we're back down to that smaller area. Then we have that last pass of a 1/10 of an inch, or 10 thousandths. Will the larger pass shorten the bit's life? Fractionally. I mean, instead of it lasting 200 hours, maybe a 199.5, because you're giving it a chance, you're taking it easy after that and giving it a chance to kind of recover. And something to remember is all bits are consumable items. You are going to go through bits. Depending upon the bit, the quality of the bit, all of that stuff, how often you use it, how hard you push it. The biggest enemy to the life of the bit is heat. So if you've got bits that are turning blue or black at the end, you're overheating your bits. That, generally speaking, means your RPM is too fast and your feed rate is too slow, or a combination of the two. So, a last pass with a compression bit on hardwoods for me always leaves a line at the change. from up to down cut that's very visible on end grain where the cutting is going in an opposite direction. Yes. And that's going to promote a lot of sanding. And that's also another reason why I tend to not use compression bits on hardwoods is because they do leave those witness marks. Now, if you're going to do a lot of sanding and you don't care about that, fine. I also tend to get a better surface finish with either an upcut or a downcut and not the compression. Compression bits work well with, again, sheet goods, but I tend to not use them on hardwoods just because I get a better finish with either an upcut or a downcut. And I plan accordingly. So, let's see. Linda Lindsay, my better half, easiest way to determine S versus Z is to draw the letter and look at which way the center leans. I do this with my spinning students because we have the same issue. Yes, yes, they spin in S direction or Z direction, one to spin and one to ply. So, yes, just draw the letter. You can see it. All right, let's see here. Oops. There we go. Larger passes use more of the blade edge. Using just the tip all the time blunts the tip faster and leaves the rest sharper. That's true. And that's another reason why I tend to use separate last pass. If I'm cutting out a profile, a perimeter of any shape in any material, I always use a separate last pass unless the material won't allow me to do that. And that's very, very rare. But if I have something that's very thick and very hard, I will use a smaller allowance. Usually I go with 0.01, but I have gone with 0.006 or 0.008 in the past to take a little bit less off in that last pass. So let's see here. It's also a balance. Um, it's a balance between the lifespan of the bit and the quality of the end product. And you can extend the life of your bits if you're willing to invest more time sanding or in finishing work because you have a lot more cleanup to do on edges because you made a lot more passes. But is it worth your time versus buying a new end mill in 6, 8, 10 months, you know? And again, I'm a home hobbyist. I've got end mills that I've been using for 5, 6, 7 years. So I just don't go through them like somebody who does a lot of production work will. If you're doing a lot of heavy production and you're running machine 8 hours a day, 5, 6 days a week, yeah, you're going to go through bits faster than I ever will. So, see, AL Peleg says, would I expect that larger passes would lengthen the life of the bit? Consider the fact that if you do 3 passes at 1/3 of the depth, you're using the bottom of the bit times 3 and the top times 0. That's true. But then again, is the life of the bit worth more than your time in cleaning up? And only you can make that judgment. A lot of this is a balance, and sometimes there is no best, there is no perfect way. You have to decide what's more important to you. Now, yeah, it's a $30 bit. But what's your labor worth? That doesn't mean throwing away a bit every week because you want to power through stuff and burn them up. That means finding that balance where you're getting good value for the money you paid for that bit versus just, throwing it away. So be careful what you're admitting to. Linda's out there. I'm an open book, I'm an open book. Bull Shanigan. Hey, Bull, what's going on? Don't forget to account for tool deflection. Yes, that's a major part of it because sometimes it depends on the diameter of the bit and how hard you're trying to push it and how deep your pass depth is. You may not see it. In fact, you probably won't see it. But if you're getting any irregular edges, you're probably getting tool deflection. And tool deflection happens just before you break bits. Now, there's a lot of people out there that are of the mindset that if you're not breaking bits, you're not learning anything. I don't believe that because I can break bits all day long and not learn a thing. Okay. And by that same logic, you don't know how to drive until you've totaled 3 cars. Well, I think we'd all agree that's a bunch of BS. If you're breaking bits, one of 3 things is going on. One of 4 things is going on. Either your feed rate is too fast, or your pass depth or depth of cut is too high. You're trying to go too deep, or your spindle RPM or router RPM is too slow, or a combination of 2 or more of the above. So if you're breaking bits, stop, figure out why. Do you need to speed up the spindle or router RPM? Do you need to take smaller bites? Maybe you can't cut, a half inch per pass. Probably not, unless you've got a pretty robust machine and a pretty robust bit. And maybe you can't run at 380 inches per minute. So there's a lot of things to balance in there. A lot of people will tell you to follow what the manufacturer says, and that is true as a general rule. But the thing to remember is the manufacturers, depending upon the manufacturer, you have manufacturers like Cadence Manufacturing, the Jenny Bits, you have IDC Woodcraft. They gear more towards the home hobby CNC market. So they're gearing towards home hobby machines like Onefinities, Shape Okos, things of that nature. Then you have Amana and Onsrud and oh my gosh, Vortex Tool. They're geared toward the industrial market. So Amana is going to tell you that this 1/4 inch bit can go at 320 inches per minute. Yeah, the bit can do it, but can your machine? Maybe, maybe not. I mean, my first 2 CNC routers wouldn't go faster than 200 inches per minute. That was the rapid rate. And it was because it was a lead screw. The motor just physically couldn't turn fast enough to move the machine faster than that. So, if you're, excuse me, and that's part of learning your machine. You have to learn its capabilities. You have to learn your router or your spindle's capabilities, and you've got to learn the material that you're using. There are some materials I can put on here and cut through in 1 pass. There are other materials I need 3, 4, 5 passes. Not all materials are created equal, and that's why the speeds, feeds, and depths of cuts they're gonna change. Yeah. Maurice over at Ericsson Design and Woodworking says, my belt-driven machine dictates all my feeds and speeds. Exactly. And they're going to change because materials are different. So you're telling me that Bits and Bits make bits that bite and give you more bytes per bit. Type that up in triplicate and email it to me. No, I'm teasing. I'm kidding. On the subject of bits and collets and what have you here, One of my channel members asked a question, and it was a simple question, but I've not seen anybody address it. And that was, I have an ER20 collet here. This is ER20 half-inch collet. And she was needing to switch over to an 1/8-inch collet in the collet nut. And I've not seen anybody address this. You can be very difficult, or it can be very, very easy. First thing you should do is look at, let's say I got to take this out, okay? Look at the collet nut. There may be a mark on the inside. Can you see that little mark right there? Kind of like a half moon shape there. It may be on the inside, it may be on the outside. What you'll do is you'll take it in your hand, and looking at the top of the collet, I'm going to pull that collet towards that shape, and it snaps right over. Then I can pull that collet right out of there. And the same thing in replacing the collet. Get my new collet, whichever size I need, put it in with it angled at that little half moon, and snap it right into place. Now, if you try to pull this sucker in any other spot, that sucker's not coming out. It just ain't. But if I pull towards that spot, it's kind of like the child-proof cap. It just comes right out. Now you see that groove right there? That sets in a ring inside. Okay? And if you look at that ring, there's a gap in that ring inside there. So put it in, snap, and there you go. But again, take the collet out of your spindle, take that collet and just push it towards that mark. Snap right out. A lot of folks don't know that these snap into place too. I've known a couple people that have just put the collet up into the taper and then thread the nut on there. It's like, wait a minute, no, that's got to snap in. That's part of the clamping mechanism. So yeah, that's easy. Now, while you've got it apart, it's a perfect time to clean everything up. Another thing that I have changed here recently is I used to use isopropyl alcohol and sometimes VM&P naphtha, which is benzene basically. But I've since changed, and this works just as well. It's a heck of a lot cheaper, and it's a heck of a lot safer in that it's not flammable, and that is Simple Green. I mean, this stuff, I don't know what's in it, but oh man. It works very, very well. So I've got this little container that I just fill up with Simple Green. It's the container this collet nut came in. And I can drop the collet in there, or collet nut, then I can drop the collet in there, let them soak for 15, 20 minutes. Then I'll take them out. Do yourself a favor and go down to the big box store, the grocery store, whatever, and buy a denture brush. It's a little stiffer than a toothbrush, and these bristles are a little bit softer. But this will get down inside there and clean all that gunk out, clean everything out of there. Then I rinse it under running water, then blow it out with compressed air, either the canned air or my compressor, either or. When it comes to the collet, scrub the whole thing inside and out. And notice all of these slots. Make sure there's no sawdust or yuck or junk in there at all. Rinse it under running water, blow it off with an air hose or canned compressed air, then put it back in and you're set and ready. Come on. I just went through that whole thing. There we go. Snap it in. So, yes, Kimberly, the 1/8" collet will replace the 1/4" collet. You can pop out your 1/4" collet, set it aside, grab your 1/8" collet. I don't have one here handy. Pop that in, and you're ready to go. And when you finish using that, you can pop it back out and put the 1/4" back in. What I did was I cheated. I got more collet nuts. That way I don't have to swap them out. I have this 1/2 inch, 3/8 inch, 1/4 inch, 1/8 inch, and 6 millimeter. And they all have a collet nut. Every one. So all I do is pull one out and put the next one back in. So I don't need to swap them out. How often should they be cleaned? I clean mine at the end of the day when I'm finished using it. And the same with the bit. The same with the bit. I have another smaller thing. I just got finished cleaning a V-bit. I have another smaller container that I put Simple Green in, put the bit in, and let it soak 15, 20 minutes. Scrub it down, and scrub it down, rinse it under running water, and you know. So, but I clean it, and then that's it. And yes, Pete is absolutely right. Collets also are a consumable item. They do wear out, and they do break. While you have it out and have it apart, look at these slots. If you see any cracks around these slots, if you follow them, all right, we've got that one right there goes all the way out at the top. But I'm trying to see as well as do this. It comes all the way down and stops right there. Okay. Then this one starts here and goes all the way down and goes out through the bottom. They can crack. If you have any cracks or anything is broken, or if you look down inside and you can see where it looks like something has been spinning in there, it's not shiny and pretty, it needs to be replaced. These do wear out, they do break. If you've snapped a bit, if you've broken a bit, take the collet out and look at it. See if that dented or broke. Another thing that can happen for this, I got to go get a bit. Another thing that can happen is if you don't get your bit seated in there all the way or far enough, if you've got just a little bit of that bit shank in there, it can wobble, or as Bull was talking about, bit deflection. That puts stress on the inside of the collet. Now, you don't have to bury this thing all the way so that it's coming out the back like that. That's a no-go either. This should not touch the inside of the spindle. You want at least, you want that in there as far as you can get it without either touching the inside of that taper or putting one of these cutting edges inside the collet. That's way too far. You may or may not be able to go flush with the end of the taper. Generally speaking, I try to keep it somewhere around 1/8 of an inch down from the end.
Okay. So some bits you can't do that. Some bits have a very short shank. Um, but overall, in general, you want that bit up in that collet so that it's holding the entire shank, as much of that shank as possible. If you look at, I was just getting ready to go there. Ayal, thank you. Most of my bits have a mark that looks like the letter K, indicating how deep it should be in the collet. If you look at that letter K real closely, what it is it's actually an arrow pointing to a line. It looks like the letter K, but it's not. That is the line where that should be right up at the edge of your collet. That's how deep it needs to be in there. Not all bits have them. I would say maybe out of all the bits that I have, well, for instance, this is a white side bit and it doesn't have that mark. A couple of my other brands of bits um, don't have that mark. Yeah, I wasn't doubting that you didn't know that, AL. I was just letting other folks know who may not know that. Yeah, I wasn't doubting that. I knew you knew that. So anyway, yeah, just um, I saw Kimberly ask a question over there. How do you get this out of your spindle? It just screws on. It's threaded. Um, I can't really show. I don't think my other camera's pointed over there. Let me look. See here. Is my other camera pointed over there? Well, it might work. I don't know if you can see up here. There's enough of the spindle shaft sticking out. That's threaded. I've got 2 wrenches, small and large. The small fits on the spindle, and that just screws on. Once I get it started, get the bit up in there, tighten. And yours should be the same. Some routers have a built-in spindle lock, a little thing that you push and it holds the spindle. So you just use one wrench. I don't like them. I've had spindle locks break. I personally, even if my Porter Cable 890, it has a spindle lock. I don't use it. I don't use it. I just 2 wrenches and boom, done it. So see, there are some questions up here. Let's get to these here. Kimberly Went says, I just did Kyle's chip carving lesson, and he recommends 120-degree V-bit. Amana is 84 versus 40 for IDC. Thoughts? I am not I don't have any real brand loyalty when it comes to most bits. Having said that, I'm a major fan of Cadence Manufacturing's downcut V bits. I am a fan of those. They work very, very well. But I sometimes the Amana bit is better. Other times it's kind of Chevy versus Ford. I have found that no real benefit in spending more money for the same thing. I mean, I've got some $9 eBay bits in here that work just as well as a $60 Amana bit. The higher priced bits have their place. If you're doing a lot of production, then maybe some of the um, maybe some of the more expensive tooling is worth it, but then again, maybe not. You know, um, it's so wide. Didn't know if more expensive is more stable. No, that's not necessarily the case. Um, it may be. A lot of times you're paying for the name. You see we sell that in table saw blades. You can buy a Freud blade for $75, but then you can go and find other blades that are the exact same thing for 350 or 400. You know, when it comes to bits, especially if you're just starting out, this is what I would do. Okay, Kimberly, and I don't have a dog in this fight. Okay. If it were me, I would start with the IDC bit and see how it works out. If I'm not getting a good finish, or if it's a bit that I'm going to use one time, um, why spend the extra $40? You know? Now, if I'm not getting a good finish, I might jump up to that $80 bit and see how it works. You know, um, you can do a lot with a core box bit, but like a half-inch core box bit, I can do a lot with that. But there are times I'm going to need a deeper cutting depth. So it's worth it for me to go ahead and spend the $80 and buy a half-inch ball nose bit that has an inch and a half of cutting depth that the core box bit doesn't. It just depends. Personally, I would start with the cheaper one, and because I can always upgrade. But if I'm going to use a bit once, that's sometimes it's hard to justify, you know. And yes, they are consumable, but you can get to the point to where you're throwing good money after bad. I mean, $40 is less of a ouch in the wallet, but if you've got to buy three of them to equal the life of the $80 bit, you know. So, I mean, that's 100% up to you. Personally, I would start with the less expensive one and then upgrade if I need to. Okay. John Thumb wants to know, should you remove your bits from the spindle when you're done, or can you leave them in? If I'm done with it, I take it out for two reasons. Number one, I'm going to clean it, and I'm going to clean the collet. Number two, um, if you've ever gone used a router table where somebody has had a bit in there for a long time, and you go to take that sucker out, sometimes you think you need an engine hoist. You got to change the router table down and chain up that hoist to get that bit out of there, because all woods, I don't care what kind of wood you're cutting, they all have pitch, resin, various different compositions inside that make up the structure of the wood. And a wood can have, 6%, 8% moisture content, but that's enough. And in that dust is going to be a little bit of moisture. In what we're cutting, some of it's going to evaporate. You're going to get fumes up in there. And as they dry, it becomes sometimes almost as hard as concrete. You also have the risk of corrosion doing the same thing. Personally, I don't leave bits even overnight. I mean, you can see I've got, where'd I put it? I set it over there. I've got the collet out of it. All the other collets are in the drawer. I don't leave bits in my router or spindle overnight. I take them out. Even if I'm in the middle of a carve and I have to start again tomorrow, finish it up tomorrow, I'll take it out, clean it all up, put everything away, come back and start from where I left off. And that, yes, that means re-zeroing my Z and all that other good stuff. No, I don't leave a bit in uh, overnight. And that's a good point. Plus, they poke if I forget they're still in. Yes, they bite. router bits bite, especially when you get something like that. That's like a hypodermic needle, all right? And trust me when I say that puppy bites. And so do 15-degree V-bits. They bite, and they bite hard. And that's another reason to make sure that you are current on like your tetanus shots and things of that nature. Because, man, they don't care. They don't care. Okay, let's see here. Pete, Nature's Live Edge. Mark, did you get your CNC 12 software updated? Yes, sir, I did. It is updated. It's working. Everything's running. I did a calibration test carve the other day. Let me shut off my heater. And it works like a champ. That's the pattern I use to check calibration on my machine. Draw a 4-inch square, 4-inch diameter circle, and then a triangle with a 2-inch center diameter. I then measure all the sides to make sure that they're the correct length. And I check the circle to make sure it's a circle, not egg shape. And everything is perfect. I've got all the right sizes, all the right measurements. It works. So first carve with the new EX controller under my belt. Now I'm ready to go. It wasn't as difficult as I thought it was going to be, but it's ready to go. All right, let's see here. I have another question here. Okay, David Hittenberger says, my 3D carve has a 1/10 of an inch vertical flash of material around the whole profile, or the entire profile. Will an offset vector clean up the profile so there isn't any sanding to complete the profile? Okay. My 3D carve has a 1/10 of an inch vertical flash of material around the entire profile. Well, let's jump over here into Aspire, and let me ask you, I'll close this. When you set up your finishing toolpath, did you use a boundary offset? What I normally do is, if I'm using, for instance, the 16th inch tapered ball nose, I will use a boundary offset of at least the diameter of the bit. For a 16th inch tapered ball nose, I will probably go, I'll start with a 16th of an inch and do my previews, see how that works. So I use a boundary offset, again, at least the diameter of the tip. So, all right. I hope that helps. If you didn't use a boundary offset, try that and preview it and see what it looks like. If you did use a boundary offset, try increasing it a little bit. So, I hope that helps that. Let's see here. Pete says high quality carbide bits can be sharpened. Yes, they can. On that subject, let me grab one here, something big that I can show in there we go. Something big that'll show up on camera. On that subject, bits that have a brazed carbide cutter like this. This is a white side bowl and tray bit. Okay. And the cutter you can see is brazed to the body. Don't touch the bevel of the blade, but the face of that blade can be touched up. It can be dressed with a diamond file or something like that. You can touch up the flat edge, the flat faces of these blades, take out any small nicks, or just to dress that edge a little bit. They work that works very, very well. And I've got one 90-degree V bit that I bought 10 years ago. I'm still using. It doesn't change the diameter of the bit, doesn't change the dimensions. It does work very well dressing up that flat side, and that'll help keep that cutter sharp and keep it going. People ask about sharpening spiral bits, upcut spirals, downcut spirals, whatever as the case may be. And I don't know what your local market is like. Here, we have 3 sharpening services. Only one will even touch 1/4-inch diameter upcut or downcut spiral bits. The other 2 won't even bother with them. They will do my 1/2-inch spirals, but they won't do 1/4-inch spirals. And the one place that does do 1/4-inch spirals, he wants $9 to sharpen the bit. That might not be much, but that's half the price of a new bit. So maybe get it sharpened once, and after it's sharpened, if they won't do it, I wouldn't go to them. Tell them you want the bit mic'd and you want the true measurement, because now you've just changed the diameter. They resize the bit. It's no longer 0.25. It's probably going to be closer to 0.235, something like that. So you can get bits resharpened, but it could possibly change the tool diameter, and ask them to give you a good measurement of what that new tool diameter is so you can make that change in your tool database for that particular tool. Okay, it will make a difference. Okay, John Thumb is asking, when using a touch probe for a V-bit, should it touch the probe at the point or shaft of the bit? If you're touching Z, it should touch the tip. If you're setting if you're using like a 3-way touch plate, like I use, I used to put a 1/4-inch end mill in the spindle, and then use that to touch off my X and Y. Then I would change that out and put in my V-bit and do the Z touch off that way. The new EX controller uses a different system. Basically, all I'm doing is doing the Z touch off. And for that, you'll mount the bit in your spindle, tighten it with the wrench, then just touch the tip of the probe. I never set my XY with the V-bit. If you're setting X and Y, there's several ways you can do it. I prefer to put in, like, say, a 1/4-inch end mill, or even what I do now, and I'm not suggesting you go out and buy one of these. I have a precision ground 1/2-inch dowel that I put in my 1/2-inch collet, and that gets mounted in my spindle, and that's what I set my X and Y with. But I don't do this very often because I have known work locations on my spoil board. I set my XY to those known locations. I don't have to do this anymore. All I need to do is set my Z0. And I do have videos on that. I will find some links how to set. No, I won't. Because that's machine specific. You will want to go to your controller publisher's website, see if they have a video on setting up a known work location. I believe Garrett over at IDC Woodcraft has a video on setting a known work location, a work offset on GSender, but I'm not 100% certain. I will look, and if he does, I'll find that link and I'll put it in the description as soon as we're done here. I'm not really sure, but I've used that, and that works better than any touch plate that I've ever used. It's repeatable and it's known. And all I have to do is click a button, tell it to go into G55 work offset, and boom, it does. It's my X and Y is set. I just mount the material, set Z, and go. So let's see here. What do you mean drink? We don't have a Mark Lindsay CNC drinking game that I'm aware of. Let's see, Jim Brown. Hey, that's pretty cool. I use automotive vacuum caps on my bits when I change bits. Let me throw something at you here. That's a good little tip. I hadn't considered that. But let me show you something that I do, Jim. When I go to do a tool change, you'll notice I have an old mouse pad here. I change bits over that mouse pad because when you've got something, a sharp bit like this, and you take the wrenches and you break that loose, there have been many times that bit has fallen down out of the collet. And I once dropped a 23 thousandths diameter end mill and shattered the tip before I ever used it. Just shattered it into 3 pieces. And you get something like this, 15-degree V-bit, that's going to hurt you and the bit dropping it that way. So I always change over an old mouse pad. It just works for me. And then channel member and general all-around good egg, Ellen, who is out there in the chat right now, went in cahoots with somebody and got me this. So that appears in videos. But the old blue nasty mouse pad, that's what I use on a daily basis. It's cheap insurance. Keep you from gumming up your bits, breaking them, shattering them, stuff like that. So but yeah, a mouse pad is perfect for that. And Ellen, there she is right there. Thank you for that. That was cool. You guys are great. But let's see here. Let's see here. Okay, I think I've got all the questions. Let me shoot up here and make absolutely certain. Joseph Carver says, I think CNC's tool setter is supposed to set X, Y, and Z with V bits. There may be some out there. When you get into specifics and machine specifics, it's really hard because I know the equipment that I've used. I don't know the CNC labs machines. I've never been in the same room with an alt mill or a long mill. I don't know Shapeoko machines. I don't know Onefinity machines. I only know what I've used. And something like maintenance, lubrication of the machines. I know what Avid tells me. Avid tells me to use um, lithium grease. And a lot of people say, oh no, it's going to attract dust. Well, excuse me. Yes, grease will attract dust, but here's what you got to remember. When I'm lubing the bearings, I'm lubing the bearings. I'm not putting a coat of grease on each of these linear rails. I'm lubricating the bearings. They're two complete different things. So there's no sawdust or chips or anything like that on those linear rails because I'm not greasing the rails. I'm lubing the bearings. So follow your manufacturer's instructions. Your manufacturer built your machine. They know best what to use to lube the machine. How often do I clean and lube? Probably after about every 20 hours of use. I'll wipe everything down, give the bearings a couple of squirts, and make sure everything is nice and clean. I take the collets and the bits out of the machine, clean them up before I go on the house for the day. And that way, when I come out, it's ready to go. Uh, did you see my question about roundover placement versus the outside line of the profile line? No, I did not see your question, but when I do a roundover, what I do, bring this back up here, for example, and I'll uncheck that toolpath. If I want to round over this edge, what I'll do is I'll do a profile toolpath. Let's select the bit. Which roundover bit am I going to use? I'll use the 1/4 inch roundover bit. Okay, I'll select that. It's a 1/4 inch radius, so I'm going to use 0.25 as my cut depth. There's no reason for it to do 4 passes. I can probably get by with, no, I don't need to do that. Let's bring it down to 3 set passes. Okay. I will go on the vector. On the vector. Because that's going to put that point right there and round over here. No allowance offset, nothing like that. Calculate it, and let's speed it up, and ba-boom. There's the roundover. Okay? On the vector. I do the same thing with a V-bit. And to make a chamfer. I just select my cutting depth and do that on the vector. That's the main thing. Okay, getting a little line, that's because you may have to do a little bit of an allowance offset. What you've got there is you've got a bit that doesn't have a flat, that doesn't come to an infinite point. There's a flat there somewhere. So you're getting a little bit of a, let me bring this back, because I got that here. I didn't put in allowance offset. You see that little line right there? That's caused by, well, let's just go back in here and let's take a look at the bit. That's caused by that tip right there. And I didn't do an allowance offset to make up for that. Some bits have a pointed tip, some have a flat tip. And if you've got a little flat tip, that's what's causing it. So, we'll do this as a last question here. Is it possible to upgrade from VCarve Desktop to Pro? Yes. Or you can only upgrade within a version's upgrade. No, you can upgrade from VCarve Desktop to VCarve Pro. The way you would do that is go into your the Vectric portal, and let me go ahead and bring this up, and I'll show you. The website is portal.vectric.com. You'll log in and you go to your software or upgrade your software. Okay. And click upgrade, and it will say right over here what the prices are to upgrade. Okay. So that's go into your Vectric portal, portal.vectric.com. You'll sign in, upgrade your software right there. This is where you download your clip art. This is where you download your software. Say you want to put it on another computer. Download it here. Okay. So mine is a full point. We'll get a little bit. We'll get into it a little bit more tomorrow. Okay, Kimberly, and I'll show you what I mean. Speaking of tomorrow, channel members. Tomorrow, members only live stream. Don't forget to check the community tab for the link to tomorrow's members only live stream. We've got a few things that we're going to discuss, some great projects. Also, some unfinished business to take care of. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, or you'd like information on how to become a channel member and take part in these members only live streams every Monday evening, if you look down below this video panel, you'll see the word join somewhere. They keep moving it around on me. You'll see the word join. Click on that button. A panel is going to pop up and another video is going to play telling you all about channel membership. We have a great group of people. We'd really love to have you join us. There's always room for more. We have a great lively discussions, a super secret Facebook group, and live video chats and things of that nature. We really have a good time. It's a great group of folks, and we'd love to have you join us. Next Sunday, I'm not certain what I'm going to do. I'm going to try to have a guest. We'll see if he's receptive. Don't know. We'll see how it goes. Other than that, going through the Rolodex in my mind. Right now, I've got to get ready to go grocery shopping, so the heads go in that direction. Yeah, we'll go ahead and we'll do that. We'll say, have a great day. Thank you for spending part of your Sunday with me. I love doing these live streams. You guys come up with great questions. And until then, next time, go do something cool. Go make some chips. Or if you've been in the shop all weekend, go sit down, watch some TV with a bag of chips. Rest, relax. You look tired. Thanks for being a part of all this. I really appreciate you folks more than you'll ever know. Y'all take care. Have a great day.